Building facades have multiple boxes to tick in being smart, sustainable, safe, and much more. As an industry, we have progressed over the years, but are we there yet? We asked, and we've got our facade experts to answer. For today's podcast episode, I'm joined by Marina Kindelan, Associate Director Façades at AESG, as well as Liam Northam, Façade Team Lead at Ramboll. Thanks very much both for joining me today. It's a pleasure having you in our studios.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
The industry is chasing sustainability as the end goal, of course, with many other goals. Now, does sustainability in facades come with a cost? And how can we as an industry ensure cost efficiencies, while also, of course, maintaining sustainability? Maybe you want to take that first, Liam?
There are cost impacts. Yeah, there's a wide range of kind of design issues that get drawn into that kind of net zero approach. And definitely they have cost impacts. But from a long-term point of view, those cost impacts those initial costs are outweighed by the long-term value of the building you're producing. So is your building going to meet policy requirements in the future? Certain developers, certain organizations are going to require minimum standards. I would say, let's take an example of a blue chip company like IBM or something like that. They are not going to have their staff in unhealthy buildings or unsustainable buildings in a few years' time. They will require certain standards for their staff. So that will mean that a building that meets those standards has a higher value. Yeah. So the value of your asset is going to be affected by how you've managed to integrate sustainable design into the design and operation of that building. So yes, there is cost, but I think more and more that will become repaid in time.
Marina, do you agree with Liam on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we need to focus more on in terms of what is a sustainable building and what it's going to give you afterwards, and actually the requirements that are coming. But I think it's really important also as a consultant, I have seen that if the targets and all the sustainability targets for the facades are put in place from the beginning, early stage, and you design towards those targets, sometimes the cost impact is not that high. It's just appropriate, to choose the most appropriate system or design to achieve these targets, and also to discuss with the sustainability team, because it's always kind of an open discussion between the sustainability team and the facade team to see what is achievable, what is more suitable for the project to set up the adequate targets. It not always comes with a cost impact. I think it depends if we are going maybe for a net zero, it will have, because the requirements are higher. But when we're talking about another certification, it's not really, it doesn't have a cost impact. It's more about the design, a proper design.
Right. And while we're still talking about costs, Liam, I want to understand from you first, just how, what are the cost implications associated with facade safety? And once again, as an industry, how can we improve cost efficiencies in this regard?
So facade safety, obviously there's just kind of three parts to that really. There's facade safety during construction, during building life, and then during deconstruction, which is a part we also need to consider in our design. I mean, in terms of, first of all, I'm from a contractor background, as you know. Safety in design when it comes to erecting a facade is, what's the right way of saying this? Whatever you invest in that, I think, can never be more than the cost of getting it wrong. We have to build facades safely. I think that is it's a baseline requirement. Okay. So as designers, we need to approach those designs and understand what is buildable. And really a lot of that comes from access. I think there's a lot of good systems on the market at the moment, which our designs can work in with those systems. But the main issue for contractors is access, how they get to the area, particularly obviously facades is one of the most high risk elements of construction work, because it's all work at heights. That's where most fatalities occur. So I think that's important that we can do more in our designs to assess how a contractor would build something and then communicate that back to the contractor when they start work. And we have design risk assessments, which are passed on to the contractor, but I often find that those are not very detailed, and they can be quite generic. So I think we can do better in making those very specific. And maybe that's something when the contractor is engaged, we actually have a a discussion, a sit down with them, and we actually pass on some of that information so they can understand what we were thinking of when we designed that bit in the corner at the 20th floor, that how are you going to get there? Because we should consider that as well. I think it's very important. So in terms of making that more cost efficient, I think that communication is important in doing that. Yeah, early on.
Mm-hmm. Marina, I caught you nodding in agreement.
Again, of course, I think Liam's completely right on that. And I think in that terms, in some of the cases, if we think is in some of the buildings and when we are designing it, if we think there is a huge risk or higher risk in terms of the construction because it's external access in a lot of the cases, that's really there is a risk. What we will try to promote is more like a prefabricated system. There is two reasons for that. The main one, as we are saying, a lot of the prefabricated systems that allows you to actually install it from inside the building. So the risk during the construction is way less. That's how Europe is actually moving forward, like towards. Mm-hmm. But there is also another reason, is like all the QA/QC process that is done in the factory. The quality of that QA/QC process is way better. So in reality, we need to move more towards this type of construction, prefabricated, that removes the risk on the construction and the risk of something that is not going wrong, like it's going wrong on the system itself. It gives you like the quality control of it is completely different than the ones doing on site.
Right, and you both hinted at coordination, collaboration, and good communication early engagement across projects and on contracts. So that's something I want to bring up now. Just how crucial is that for optimal facades delivery, and what could go wrong in the lack of such collaboration? Do you want to go first, maybe, Marina?
Yeah, I will take it. So I think it's as a facade consultant, I think it's really important, this collaboration from early stages. From when the concept is being designed, it's really important to have this collaboration to communicate our knowledge to the architect, the design team, the client, so they can take informed decisions. That's really important. The same on the collaboration, if we are talking, for example, with the sustainability team, things like that. It's really important, this collaboration to, again, I think I discussed about this previously. It's really important that we communicate and we agree on the targets that we are looking for, because it's really important that we actually are the ones deciding these targets, because we know what is available or what can be done. So that's kind of really important things during the design stage. And what it can be wrong and go wrong is that if at some point we can support and we can inform the client to actually take those decisions, to inform them, to lead them to take some of the decisions. But as a facade consultants, we have a limited I don't know, like how to say it. We have some limitations. So actually we can inform them in terms of, for example, going back to the fenestration, where is ideally to have this fenestration, where we don't recommend it, or if you put it, you need to cover, you need to add some shading elements, things like that. But at the end, it's for the client and the architect to decide if they do it or not. What it ended up happening is that if they don't take or they don't follow some of our recommendations, the building maybe doesn't perform the way that we are expecting. Right. So again, you ended up with one area that actually is too exposed to the sun, so the people doesn't feel comfortable. So then the people is not going to rent it. For example, an office, they don't rent it. A house, they don't buy it because it's really uncomfortable, so much glare. They need to cover, they need to fix it. Right. So that's, for me, is what it can go wrong.
Mm-hmm. And all the stakeholders suffer then.
Exactly.
Liam?
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with what Marina said. I think the best situation for us is to be involved very early, because it's when the architecture is locked. Yeah, when you can't move that window or you can't change the orientation of that elevation or whatever, that's when a lot of the recommendations that we can assist with, you can't use them any longer. You end up trying to fix a problem that's built in to the facade because of how the building is orientated or how the space is used. So obviously the architect has the big job of trying to make it all come together in terms of a usable building that the client wants. But I think we have a lot to offer very early on in terms of how they can get the best performance out of it. And like Marina said, and I think another thing on collaboration would also to be better at getting contractors involved earlier in the design process. So most of the contracts that we work on here are like a traditional contract, essentially, where It's designed, we've done issued for construction drawings, and we go out to the market. And that works, fine for a lot of buildings, particularly the simpler kind of construction. The more complex you're building, I think it really is an advantage to have a specialist or a contractor involved early on, because what you're looking at there is making sure that what's drawn is actually deliverable, And we can assist in a lot of that. That's part of obviously what we do as facade engineers. But when you get into very complex projects, I think there's a lot of advantage of having early contractor involvement.
Are you both seeing enough early contractor involvement just from your experiences?
I'm not.
I will say that it's more than before, but it still is slow. But I think it's slowly, coming up. But I think when the client has done it that way, some of them they repeat. Actually, they repeat and they do it again. But I agree with you. It's a big advantage because you remove or you reduce the value engineers. Or if there is a value engineer exercise, it happens in really early stages.
Correct.
So you have enough time to redesign the whole thing towards that.
It becomes integrated. Yeah. Whereas, again, from my experience, you win a project, you get handed a pack of drawings. Probably you've seen them once before during tender. When you start to engineer this facade in terms of a subcontractor who's going to fabricate it, you understand, okay, well, the size of that GRC doesn't work and the size of that precast doesn't work. And this mullion's not going to be 100 mil, it's going to be 150 mil. And these are all things that facade engineers calculate and we look at in the design. But a lot of buildings get to site, or a lot of projects get to site, and they don't have that kind of overview of what's available in the market, what can be processed, what can be produced, and then the impact of that is you have a change in the architecture.
I think on that one, I think we should be able to actually assess that.
Definitely, yeah.
In reality, I think we should be, as a facade consultants, we should be able to assess that.
100%. I'm talking about jobs with no facade consultant even.
No, those ones I completely agree. And those ones is when they use it, you have seen, I'm pretty sure, like when they use kind of some packages from other projects. They are not being
standard
engineered.
Details, and the stuff doesn't work. It doesn't fit. So I think like as consultants now we have that's part of our role is to make sure that doesn't happen. But I think moving forward, I think the industry has to try and be more collaborative with the market, because at the moment there's quite a barrier between the two. And the design and build kind of model, I think, does give better certainty with project delivery. And
that the design is going to go ahead with that one. Like I agree with you. It's really the way to move forward.
I mean, as an example, you might have a certain contractor on board. That he or she uses that system. Then you start to integrate that system in the design. So by the time you get to an issue for construction set, you can build that almost.
Yeah, because if not, they will need to go to redesign. And some of the cases, the design, what they have available is completely different what is being designed from our side.
And that's what I've done personally a few times. I take that drawing set and I go, well, okay, my system doesn't work in this. So then I spend 3 months trying to negotiate with the architect to shoehorn my particular facade system that my company uses into the drawings, So, and then that also has an impact on the architecture as well, which people can never be happy about.
Yeah, I think you both answered my question about are we there yet? We're probably still playing catch up, but we've made great progress over the
Marina
years.
said there are some clients now that are starting to use design and build more regularly. Right. So it's happening.
I think in terms of collaboration, we are improving so much, I think. In terms of design and build is on the way.
Yeah.
But I think with all the technology that we have available at the moment,
right.
I think we have gone a little bit a step ahead in a lot of aspects that is more about a collaboration more than a separate disciplines. And it's not just facades. It's all the consultancy are more integrated now in terms of the design process. Before, I think it was a little bit like architect's client and then the consultants, they do their packets kind of separate.
Working in silos.
Yeah, it was just in the background there. I think now there is way more collaboration. We get more on board and discussing directly with the clients because we are, again, is going to the same point, is to inform the clients of, to inform them to take a decision. So I think in general, I can see this happening more in all the division, all the disciplines.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, discuss technology. Of course, I'm sure you'd both agree that the industry is slowly but surely adapting to innovative technologies. Now, this change across technology, what kind of an additional responsibility do you think it's going to have on facade specialists, say, a decade from now? And just what kind of challenges will these facade innovations pose?
So I think in terms of the innovation, I think the architecture, building engineer, I think is not growing or evolving as fast as other industries in terms of using the tools that we have available, but we are kind of improving. So, for example, if I'm talking, because the topic is a little bit also in terms of sustainability, things like that. In terms of the tools that we have available, we were using these tools previously just to check if the design was correct. I think now where the industry is moving forward is like more to actually use those tools to design, to guide the design. So use it on more a dynamic process to create an optimal design in terms of just as a check tool. And I think it's kind of like, it's because the market is going towards a more sustainable or more like the targets in terms of sustainability are more difficult to achieve. So now we need to use all the tools that we have in our hands to actually design optimal design.
Yeah,
that's the only way that we can achieve the targets, right?
And I think those requirements will start to filter down from the government policy. They'll start to filter down into kind of real targets for designs. So rather than just the kind of, I suppose, the large scale signature architect projects that require these type of tools, you're going to start to need those to do residential buildings, to do normal construction now, because it won't be long before there are targets for, the next apartment block needs to be net zero, it needs to be this, it needs to be that. Well, how do we demonstrate that? How do we prove that? Well, you need to start using some of those tools, just need to be like day to day. And then we need to be better at developing those models. The facade is the enclosure. It's what keeps everything inside the building in terms of the air, the heat, everything else. So we need to kind of develop how we model that more accurately, so that what we're giving clients is a kind of a performance-based design, and we've got some backup to say, okay, this is how it works. And then I think the next step is going to be a lot more facade commissioning as well, actually on site doing testing, making sure it's actually working. Because that's often a bit that's kind of, we talk about value engineering, that's a bit that's kind of crossed out right at the end, We might do hose testing, we might do like whole building air test, but apart from that, there's not really.
But in reality, it will come with a net zero. I think that's it's, as you mentioned, with the new requirements, it's going to come everywhere, and it's coming. Like they need to prove, like on the net zero, you need to prove that what you consume is the same that you generate.
Yes.
So at the end, I agree, it's going towards that way, and I agree, commission is really important because we can design as best as we can, but at the end, it's everything a little bit theoretic. It's more about theory. Like we study, we do some modelings, we run the analysis to make sure that performs. But in reality, you need to see it on site, because on the installation, and then we go back again to do it on site. Right. Some of the times when the things are done on site, they are not done properly. So then there is a risk that actually doesn't perform that it should. If you have it prefabricated, you remove that risk.
But massively,
But again, so then all that needs to be checked, and needs to be checked during the construction, at the end of the construction. And if something is not working, then it needs to be fixed. So the building at the end performs as it's been designed.
Yeah. Right. And I think you said it in the answer to the first question about existing buildings, how you retrofit or improve existing buildings. That is also a huge thing. I mean, there's a lot of building stock here in Dubai and in lots of other cities across the world that, okay, they won't have to meet the same targets, but that those buildings are essentially sick buildings, They don't have the right amount of insulation. They don't have the right amount of, there's too much solar heat gain through the building. We know, we're sure that a lot of these buildings have issues with air infiltration. So, people who own those buildings, who own those assets, they need to start to either upgrade those, repair those, do something with them. So I think there's going to be quite a big input from facade engineers in how do you do that? Like, what is the problem? How do you fix the problem? How do you measure it?
Exactly.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of that's going to be necessary.
And that one is really interesting because in reality, as you said, you need to assess what is the problem and how to fix it without really needed to demolish the whole building or the whole facade and rebuild it again. It's really important that we understand that.
Retain the important aspects of the building.
Exactly. Because, I mean, it's a lot of people say, but it's true. It's like the most sustainable thing is not building more buildings, okay? That's the most sustainable approach. But since we can do that, let's make our buildings more healthy. Right. And then without really trying to use what is there to improve it. So that's I think a challenge for us in the next years. I agree.
Definitely. Yeah. And then building things that are flexible.
Great. Thank you so much both for taking the time to join me today on the podcast. It was lovely having you share your insights and just to see the kind of passion you have for your work. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Well, that was all for this episode. We shall be back very soon with another lineup of experts and another pertinent topic. Until then, you know the drill. Like, share, comment, and subscribe, and watch this space for more. Thanks for watching.